Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Empower Hour, brought to you by the Empower Plant by Facing Brooks. I'm Dana Brooks, and I am joined today with my law partners. We have Kimmy Hogan back today. Hey, Kimmy.
Hey, happy Cinco de Mayo.
We got, hey, listen, we'll get into that in a minute. We've got Carrie Roan back. We've missed you, Carrie. We hadn't had you in a while, I don't think.
Finally, it's so exciting to be back. Yay.
All right, we've got Betsy Brown. Betsy's here. The twins mom. I'll get into her moniker later.
Bringing it.
We got Kean Thomas, who is back. He is our PR director. Welcome.
Nice.
Thanks for doing the promo today for this exciting show, y'all. I have been waiting to get Jenny Dailey, Jenny Dailey, on this show for forever, y'all. And you're probably going, why do I know that name? Why am I hearing about it? Well, she's been featured in the Democrat lately. She's one of the Tallahassee top 25 women you need to know, mentioned by the Tallahassee Democrat. She is, man, is she a volunteer. Her philanthropy, that's why volunteers is easier. Her philanthropy is very impressive. And she's going to talk about a project she's got coming up that she's very passionate about. I got to know her work through what she did to help pass and get us the Children's Services Council. So I want to talk to her about that. But you are also a Tallahassee resident, a prominent one, and you are a lawyer. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Welcome, and just tell us your story real quick.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm so honored and flattered to be here with this fantastic group of women. You guys are such a fun group, so I'm really thrilled to be invited. A little bit about myself. I am the oldest of 5 children, and so I'm very close with all of my siblings who are spread out all over the country. And we stay in touch on a regular basis. They will tell you I'm the bossy one, but that's just because I'm the oldest. I grew up in a small town in Louisiana, in South Louisiana, called Gonzales, Louisiana. We are the jambalaya capital of the world, and we take that very seriously. We have queens, we have pageants, we have races, we have competitions, we have a festival, we have a parade. It's a big deal. And I can tell you that my family has never actually become royalty. Like, we've never won the Jambalaya King title, but we've been close over the years. So have been involved, there for years. But I came to Tallahassee for school at FSU, and that's where I met John. We met in undergrad, my husband, boyfriend, who became the husband. We did our grad school here in Tallahassee. And then we left for about 7 years. So we went to London for 2 years. John did a graduate school program, and I practiced law. I actually had to take the bar exam over there, which was a hoot because they don't have a constitution. So the rules were very different, so different. So I practiced over there for 2 years, and then we came home. We went to DC for 5 years and practiced there. And then in 2005, we moved back to Tallahassee, and we've been here ever since, started a family.
Wonderful. That's great. Let me ask you this, though. What's the difference in jambalaya and etouffee?
Okay, that's a very good question. So etouffee is like a brown red sauce that's mostly sauce that you serve on top of rice.
Okay.
And you add whatever meat you have, chicken or sausage, or but most often it's seafood. And jambalaya is a rice dish without sauce.
I had it exactly backwards.
Yeah, and it also will have meat, generally whatever meat you have in it. Now, I will tell you, there is a big fat fight in South Louisiana about whether you have red jambalaya or regular jambalaya. So people in
regular
Lafayette,
brown?
Lafayette and like Lake Charles, they add tomatoes to their jambalaya. I think that's gross. And I don't think at all. I think regular jambalaya should not have any diced tomatoes in it whatsoever. So,
oh my!
About it.
I waded into something here, y'all. I'm hard tomatoes. So
yeah, you're on
listen, let's focus on what we can agree on.
There you go.
I've got something else to wade into if you want to take the pressure off you, Dana. So, Jenny, hi, Carrie Roan. My name in college was Carrie Mendrick, which is my maiden name. And I was a Zeta. So I lived right across the street from John.
I know you.
Yeah. So I know John from college and I know Charlie really well. And one of my really good friends is one of John's really good friends from Sigma Chi. So hi.
Well, isn't
I
that
love
the
it.
beauty? Isn't that the beauty of Tallahassee? I mean, I just feel like
Yeah.
they're so,
Yeah.
we're all so closely connected. There's really so few degrees of separation.
Yeah.
And I love that about Tallahassee, particularly now that I've become a parent. I really love it.
Yeah. In
Well,
fact, Charlie's son plays tennis so he plays at Childs and my boys play
Okay.
tennis. So I see Charlie and his wife all over the place and we
Yeah.
laugh about some of the old stories from
Yeah.
college. So
I can only
yeah.
imagine. I can only imagine. Yeah,
they're all good.
Lawson, their youngest, their tennis player,
Yeah.
actually gives lessons sometimes to our son, to our 13-year-old,
That's funny.
who wants to grow up to be Lawson Dailey.
No, he's such a great kid. That's awesome. That's awesome.
So great. Well, and anybody who can raise 4 teenage boys, I mean, my hat's off to Charlie and Sharon. I just feel like they are both so impressive to be able to raise such fantastic humans that they have
Wow.
raised and are raising.
Yeah.
I adore their boys.
I don't think you could give somebody a better compliment than that.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
When
to,
Charlie would
compliment
tell
them
you
on
it's
the-
all Charlie would tell you it's all Sharon. I mean, he says it's all her. 100%.
He's probably right. He's probably right. But he's so fun.
that's
He's so fun and funny. I love that about the whole Dailey family.
They're a funny bunch.
They're a funny bunch and they value humor and they value storytelling. And what's interesting is we're starting to see that in my 11-year-old, where he will like try to tell jokes and he tries to get the timing right. And then he says, was that funny? Did it work? And it's really fun to watch him learn to do that.
That's cute. That's cute. I never thought about somebody might need, training wheels for becoming funny, but I guess that's
That's because you're naturally funny, Dana.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's all
that
the rest of us have to train on it, Dana.
Practice. Yeah.
No, I just thought everybody was born naturally cynical. You weren't cynical toddlers like me.
There's that. Yeah.
You weren't a real judgy, cynical toddler. Okay. No, listen, I was thinking about parents. Well, first of all, I almost crashed into Kimmy because apparently this is a powerful margarita. She came just blistering out of the bathroom a while ago, almost mowed me down. Could you imagine all the blonde hair and just the mayhem that would have caused? Just terrible. Anyway, no, our law partner and our intake director were in the kitchen / laboratory on the Cinco de Mayo, and they think that they have achieved perfection in the margarita making realm.
Wow.
What do you think?
It's good. It's
Next
really
time
good.
I'm coming to your office to do this show then.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, we have an exotic bar cart.
That's
As
awesome.
law firms go, ours is pretty exotic.
That's awesome.
Now this has got tequila floating around in it, Grandma. So hats out to our empowered and enlightened men for giving us a cocktail for the hour. I heard you call Betsy the twin mom. So that's another little connection we have here. Betsy, how do you know Ms. Dailey? What's your connection to her in our community?
Well, we go way back actually, because our kids went to preschool together first and then reconnected this past season so we could root on our kids in flag football, and they were so good. And so I have twins and they were both on the team. One is Declan, one is Harry, and Harry has he's got a knack for catching the ball. So we had this play called the Hail Harry, where he would, the quarterback would just chuck it into the end zone and Harry would find it and let you just catch it like a can of corn. And oh my gosh, you should have heard me screaming. It was one of those moments in life where you're like, oh, my baby. And so Jenny was there and so we hung out and we watched the games together, and it was really fun. So it's great to see you, Jenny.
It became a thing. The Hail Harry became our signature.
It became a
Signature
thing.
play. So yeah, the boys would call for it. Like, come on, coach, do the
Yeah.
Hail Harry.
This is him.
Well, hey there, fella. What are you up to? Hey, I heard I missed you at the office the other day.
He is a true prince.
Oh,
Oh my
bummer.
God.
You have to come back. Your mom said
Oh,
she's
they
got
want
a lot of
to.
work.
They
to do.
want to. They
Okay.
want to. Okay, mommy's got to
We're
work.
gonna save,
I
we're gonna
love you.
save
I
you
heard
some
what
good
she
work.
said, Mom.
Yeah, you're talking
Heard
about
her.
y'all.
He's like, that's basically a contract. There was an
Yeah.
offer.
Yeah, no, and this is my other twin.
We're
So
both
yeah.
here. Hey,
Well,
hey,
hello.
Hi.
Hi.
You look familiar.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Saw you.
hopefully boys will be back on the flag football field in August when the season starts again. So
Love it.
we
Oh,
love,
you know we will.
Yeah,
Try to
we
keep
love-
us away. Try to keep
Well,
us away.
and we're so lucky in Tallahassee. We have such a great city parks and rec department. I mean, I just feel like there's so many options for our kids and our families. And it's fantastic because I mean, don't tell everybody else in the South about this, but I don't want my boys to play tackle football if I can avoid it. But
Oh,
it
yeah.
seems
No,
so
that's a
dangerous.
trend.
And so I love that the
yeah.
city offers flag football and it goes all the way up. I understand, I haven't gotten there yet, but it's my understanding that then when you get to high school and you age out of playing, then you're eligible to be the referee. And so then you can be the referee for the little kids, which I just think is such a great program.
I love that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking about you and all the work that you do for children. We're talking about your own so far, but Kia and Kimmy both have small children that are not quite in our school system yet, or well, Kia's some of hers are, but you know, they're little kids that are kind of tracking that way. And I don't know how familiar you are with Jenny Dailey's advocacy for children in our community. This is, you know, well outside of what she does as our first lady. This is a kind of passion for her. Kia, you put out a newsletter and you talk about people in the Facing Brooks Forever family. Jenny is a part of that with the Children's Home Society. She volunteers a lot of hours to help with adoptions and help children find forever families. And you know how, gosh, I can't imagine as a lawyer anything more rewarding than that. But what are your thoughts today as you think about a child advocate and what your concerns are as parents of young children?
Well, I'll tell you, my sort of guiding thoughts are that I want, and I learned this when I became a parent, because, you know, the world changes. The way you see the world changes when you become a parent, or it did for me. But I want for all of our children in Tallahassee, all of the opportunities and resources that I'm working so hard to make available for my children. So I want all of our children to have that, because they are all our children and we all benefit when they have opportunities and they succeed. We will all succeed together. And so that really sort of guides my activities. And there was a group that came to John actually when he was serving on the county commission. I think it was in March of 2018. And they said, hey, we have this crazy idea to propose a tax increase and create a taxing entity, but it will be dedicated. It'll create funds dedicated for children and families in our community. And in the other counties in Florida that have done it, they've really seen a game-changing type changes. You know, Miami-Dade County, they've totally changed their kindergarten readiness and their third grade reading scores. They've totally changed their high school graduation rates. And so, you know, John said, all right, well, let's do it. Let's do this thing. And then we learned the power of inertia and the power of the status quo, because we figured out very quickly that just because it was a good idea, and just because when we explained it to people and if they listened, they said, yeah, that's a good idea, that was not going to be enough to make it happen, to make it actually come to fruition. And so he and I and a dedicated group of volunteers kind of over a glass of wine sort of sat around and said, you know, this thing, if it fails, if we don't get behind this and really push, if it fails, it would be done for years. Like it would really set our community back for years. Yeah. So if we're gonna do this, we got to really do it and dive in with both feet. So we did. And in that period leading up to the election in 2020, our team gave presentations to more than 110 community organizations speaking in favor of that Children's Services Council. So trying to spread the word and explain what we were doing, why we wanted to do it, what it is, and that sort of thing. And I learned a lot in that process. I did a lot of those presentations. And I learned a lot in terms of, despite the fact that we all have so few degrees of separation and we might know each other or have connections, there are a lot of people who remain very disconnected and don't know what's going on. And so almost everywhere I went, it was new information that we were providing, including new information I found that in many of the settings, one of the most important things we did in those meetings was connect people to existing service providers and existing resources. So even then, in that moment, and it's continuing to this day, where there are services available, not everybody's connected to them. Not everybody knows about it. And so it just really sort of highlighted to me, and I think to John as mayor, how important it is to keep communicating, like to keep
That's kind of what I'm thinking is, my daughter's 28, but I was thinking about, well, where would I have learned about anything, when she was growing up? I remember I used to get just tremendous anxiety when it was time to plan the summers. Yeah. Because when it was regular school year, I had a system, I had a schedule, and I knew and I could manage it. But everything just threw me into a tailspin when summer came up. What was I going to do? I didn't want her to, it's just all these things. That was just so stressy for me. But, I kind of had to figure that stuff out. Sometimes they put something in the paper, or sometimes I'd learn something from her pediatrician, maybe, or something from school. But Kia, where do you get information about resources that are available to help you raise, help you raise your children and help raise them in an environment where you feel like they are not hindered or missing out on anything?
I would say it's several places, but the first would definitely be my village. That is me on the regular. I'm so grateful that my mother-in-law is here. And anytime I call my parents, it's like, we'll meet you halfway, wherever you need us. If you need us, we're there. But I would also have to say social media, tallymoms.com, and on Tally Moms on Facebook, you learn about a lot of events. You learn about a lot of ways to fill that gap, especially when you're talking about how, like you stated, I have younger kids, daycare. That almost takes 80% of my check. So
good. Oh my gosh, it's so expensive.
It's so expensive. And so you are constantly trying to, and I call it, creative finances. So I know if it's doing that to me, it's doing that to those mothers that are way less fortunate to be in the position that I'm in. So you start trying to figure out ways to fill that gap. How do you pay for it? And here's the downfall to all of this. If you're in the middle, which there's really no middle class anymore, you get nothing. So you either have to be extremely poor, or you have to be a part of that 1% to get any type of help. You're just left out there. So you're left to pay it. And then there's no baseline for, hey, where do we start the amounts, of how you pay daycare? And then sometimes you're thinking about day school. And like you say, it's that anxiety, Dana, that you're like, I had this schedule because they're getting all of this. And now what do I do when I transition them from the regular school life into, okay, now we have summertime. I have to figure all this out, and it's still hard even having a 2-parent household, and you're like, oh, how do you work this schedule out? So just going back to your initial question, it's definitely the village, and it's definitely finding, like you say, Virginia, Tallahassee has that great 6 degrees of separation. So someone is always knowing someone else, and then they pop in and say, hey, Kia, I have this for you, or you can, reach out to this person, or you can have this provided for you. But I think Tally Moms is an amazing connection because it's always something on there that's providing you those different outlets for your kids, especially since I'm really not an outside mom until it's sports time. And then I'll be there all day. But just to be outside at the park, that's something totally different. But yeah, that's where I'm at with that.
Well, let me ask you, go ahead.
I would suggest, Kia, the other thing is, as your kids get into the school system, and even before then with the daycare, I know our daycare, that Betsy's boys and mine went to, they were pretty good about connecting us to community events. So Kids Fest and Kids Inc. and all those groups, like big community organizations and events they would tell us about, which was good. And also that daycare family in particular became a family, right? Because, I mean, I have said over and over again, those daycare and preschool teachers that my children had, they weren't just teaching the children, they were teaching me, because I had no idea what I was doing. And they're like, oh, honey, the reason he keeps tripping over his feet is his shoes don't fit him. He needs new shoes. I'm like, oh, I don't know. Thank you.
And all the moms, like all the daycare moms become friends. And then we share resources. Like, it's my oldest just turned 17, and these women that were moms in his preschool, we've been best friends for 17 years, and we've shared resources the whole time, and we help with each other's kids and taking them to soccer and taking them, places. So
100%. And I feel, because it's hard to make those kind of authentic relationships as adults, but I think with parenting, it's an opportunity to make those relationships, because look, when your 2-year-old loses his mind, and like strips down naked and has a temper tantrum in front of your friend, like, she's going to love you no matter what. And y'all are going to be friends forever after that, because you've been through it together. And then tomorrow, her kid's going to do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to ask you, I want to get around to the panel, but just to be clear, I felt like I heard you say that a lot of these presentations and a lot of things you learned was that there were resources available to people, they just weren't aware of them or how to access them. So my next question, first of all, did I get that right? And secondly, the Children's Services Council, that's a dedicated source of funding to do what? What is it doing that wasn't already being done?
Well, so let me say there was definitely a gap. So although there were some resources that people were not connecting to, by and large, there is a huge, essentially, waiting list for the services that I'm talking about. So for example, the School Readiness, that is a program of scholarships for families at the poverty level who, for their children to go to daycare. And, at any given moment, there's hundreds of kids on a waiting list, because the subsidy that the state provides for that scholarship is barely break even amount of money. So a lot of daycares will limit how many spots they'll provide for those scholarships. And so that's the kind of thing is first you have to make sure people are applying for it, but then when they apply, you got to make sure that there are spots available, and there just continues to be a great need. So I would say it's not that services are going unused. They're definitely being used and still more needed. Now, what the CSC is doing right now is, I've been very impressed. They have been working like just crazy over there to create themselves, to organize themselves and figure out what are they going to do and what are they going to prioritize. So what they've done is they have done a needs assessment. And they are prioritizing this summer, funding for this summer. And it's my understanding the applications are out on the street now, where there is funding opportunity for this summer available. And they've identified, I think it was 4 priority areas. Summer program, like not daycare, but summer camps for kids, so that parents who are working parents can have spots for their kids, because as many of us who are working moms know, and Dana, you said you rush around trying to figure out what are you going to do with your children when they're young during the summer. Well, some of these day camps are $200 a week a kid. That's a ton of money. And so finding spots and programs that families can afford, and then making enough spots available for the children who need it. So that I know is one of their priority areas, and I can't remember all of the others. But that's one thing I'm excited about, is they've said, let's don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Let's do what we can now and focus on getting money out into the community now and letting families move ahead. And then their plan is, I believe, in the fall to do their sort of more permanent funding cycle, where they would look at more long-term programming. So I'm excited. I think it's really exciting to see the metrics that they're studying. They're really looking into the real data of what the needs are and where the gaps are. I think, and I have been surprised by the gap between what I thought I knew, like from reading the newspaper, or from folks talking in the community, to what the numbers are if you really study the numbers. So for example, I thought that we had a problem with high school graduation, but as it turns out, Leon County Schools does a pretty good job with high school graduation. Our graduation rates locally are pretty darn good. So that's really not where our need and priority needs to go. Now, we do have a problem with a small subset of some of our high schoolers, particularly males, particularly people of color, who are getting involved in violence and gun violence. And so that is an opportunity, I think, for a real change-making type initiative. And then the areas where our school district could really improve are the third grade reading scores and the kindergarten readiness.
Tell me why those two things are important factors that sociologists, all kinds of people look at. Third grade reading level, what's the significance of that?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked, because I asked the same question. I kept hearing people talking about.
Yeah, I learned. That's why I'm asking you. I want them to know.
Right. And I thought, well, what's this all about? And it's because there was a study done, I think it was in the 80s, and it has proven true, continued to prove true over the last 40 years or 30 years, that the level of your community's third grade reading scores is an accurate predictor. I'm not going to say whether it's a cause or just a connection, but it is an accurate predictor of the number of spots you need in a jail.
That's exactly right.
20 years
Isn't that
from
terrible?
now. And
that's how they plan jails.
Right, exactly. And so
that's
when
how
I
they plan.
when I learned that, I just thought, we have got to do something about this. And the other thing is, I've really learned to ask around and listen. I really believe in listening to the people who are already in this space doing it, because I'm not a teacher. I don't teach third grade, and I shouldn't, because I would not have the skill set for it. And so I want to know from the people who are in that space, who are trying to make changes, what is it that they're trying to do? What is getting in the way? What's their obstacle, so that we can figure out how to, change those outcomes.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Let me get to Kimmy. Kimmy, you've been patient. What would you like to ask or contribute to our discussion today?
Well, the first thing I'm thinking is I need to start reading to my kids more.
You absolutely should. Well, can I brag for just a moment? And I suppose this sort of outs me as the super nerd that I am, but I am a lawyer, so let's all admit I like to read. But my kids really like the Harry Potter series.
Yeah.
When they started maybe first or second grade, they figured out that you get a bunch of AR points for those books, in the school system. And so you could finish your whole AR goal and get the ice cream party at the end of the semester.
That's accelerated reader, right?
One of those accelerated reader program, right? And so in our family, we read those books. I read those books to the boys out loud. Sometimes John does, but in general, we've done it out loud. And so we told them they were not allowed to watch the movies or to go to the Universal Harry Potter Park until they finished the series. And so our youngest just finished the series in January, and we went in February to Universal Studios.
Oh, how fun.
It was so fun. It was so much fun as a whole family, because we had done the stories together. So, and I will tell you, Kimmy, those are probably my favorite 30 minutes of every day. Is, we sit down, one of them snuggles up to me, sometimes both of them snuggle up to me. They quiet down, and I get to read to them, and then they react, right? So they're saying, well, what about this? And what about this? And it really generates the best conversations, particularly in the last year or so, as they begin to move into the teenage world, where, typically their only conversation with me is a grunt.
Jenny, how old are your boys now?
13 and 11.
Okay. Oh, I love it. Well, so the Children's Council, I have questions about that. I was aware that it was created. And is this the first year that they're implementing policy now?
Yes, this is their first time. And the way the statute, it's a fairly like regimented system that the state legislature has created. So when you start a new council, you have to sort of do the steps that the legislature sets out. And what's good about for us, the benefit to us is right before we did it, Alachua County started the one for themselves, a brand new one about a year and a half. I think they were 18 months, 20 months ahead of us. And then at the same time as us, Pensacola is starting one as well. They call theirs the Children's Trust. And so it's been helpful because I have seen our staff and council members sharing resources, like, hey, what are y'all doing about this? And how are you doing so one of the steps is you have to do a needs assessment. And so that's what they've spent a lot of their time on in the last several months and trying to communicate, trying to figure out how do you gather community input in the middle of a pandemic, right? Like how do you, so they've done some really creative stuff. They've had some focus groups, they've had some Zoom sessions, and then they've done online surveys. And so they've really, worked hard to get the word out in the community.
Mm-hmm. Do you know if the results of their needs assessment is something that is public record or something that they can share?
It is. So I believe that the preliminary draft of the needs assessment went to the program committee like in the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
And forgive me, I've been in deposition for the last 2 weeks, and so I've lost track of what's all going on in the outside world. So it should be going to the council right now this week, or it may have gone last week. But yeah, it's all available publicly. And then I think they were going to present a preliminary draft, let the council sort of digest, ask questions, poke holes, and then come back and refine it. So I haven't seen what is the next round, but yeah, all that stuff is publicly available. Hundreds of pages of data. So more than you probably want to see.
That's wonderful. I was just thinking, I'm on the board for the Oasis Center for Women and Girls, and we look at what are the needs in the community, and what can we meet. So I can see that needs assessment would be something that could be helpful to a lot of nonprofits in our area.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there are a variety of data sources that already exist that they're drawing in as well.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Well, thanks.
So it sounds like that is these councils, these dedicated funding sources. These are things that are enacted by local voters at the local level. But if you do enact one, you kind of are married to the state, the legislated
That's right.
For engaging in it, I guess.
That's right. They
share?
Sort of set up like a skeleton or a framework, and then you build your local version, but you have to follow their skeleton or their framework.
Who are we can kind of get an idea of who the stakeholders are, but who are the people who make these decisions? Who comprises the
council members? I think it's either 9 or 10. I can't recall now.
Part of like a charter. It probably starts with a charter, and
yes,
so many
and
people.
So one of our members is Chief Judge John Shostrom for the circuit, and so he oversees or has overseen in years past the children's docket, and so he's got unique experience and is just such an advocate for children's issues. So he's a phenomenal addition to the group and a member. We have a representative from the Department of Children and Families. I can't recall his name right now, but it'll come to me. And then we have a variety of representatives from the Leon County school system. So Rocky Hanna, superintendent, sits on there. Daryl Jones, school board member, or currently chairman of the school board. Daryl Jones sits on there. And then we have, I think, 2 principals. No, I guess it's 1 principal who sits on there, Carmen Connor, from one of our Title I elementary schools locally. So we have a great presence from the school board, which I think is very helpful in terms of coordinating, because they're so involved in what they're already doing. We don't want to overlap. And then a variety of community volunteers, because it's not paid. And this is an unpaid service position, and God bless them. They have been working like crazy. They've been meeting hours and hours and hours to try to get themselves organized. And there's a good variety, sort of diversity in the members in terms of age and race and profession and background. And so it's been good because they have been able to each, from their own profession, sort of bring their skill set to bear. So, you know, one of them, I think they were, at one of the meetings I watched fairly recently, they were looking at the contract for their email services and their network and their computer services. And like, I don't even speak that language, but they have a person on the council who's like, oh yeah, I can do this. And we're going to look at these criteria and boom, 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 boom. And it was all good. So it was really, it was affirming to see everyone bringing their own separate skill sets to the council. So yeah, there's 10 of them. I can't name everybody at this moment, but I could probably find it and send you the link.
Betsy, let's get to you. What are your thoughts as you're listening to Jenny Dailey tell us about how passionate she is about the Children's Services Council, but also just everything else, just, you know, mom stuff, community stuff. And I guess none of us have ever been married to the mayor, but that sounds like that's probably a job in and of itself.
Well, I
What are your
haven't,
thoughts?
but my grandfather was the mayor of Pensacola for 13 years.
That's right.
As I
I
was
forgot to
growing
tell
up
y'all,
there.
Betsy's Pensacola royalty.
Oh, I am. Yes.
That's very
yes.
cool.
Yeah.
You can all kiss my ring later. But so I've been like, honestly, like Jenny is so interesting. I've been sitting here like feverishly writing down notes of everything I want to ask. So I mean, I've got notes here about, are you a barrister? Are you a solicitor? Like your career,
I'm a solicitor. So talking about my London practice, I am a solicitor.
Yeah.
My father used to say all the time, he was like, would you please not say that you're soliciting? Like, come on, baby, don't do that. But no,
oh my gosh.
I'm a solicitor in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And I am, you know, I'm an out of state member or whatever they call it, foreign member. But yeah, I've maintained that bar affiliation.
That is so cool. What's the difference between a barrister and a solicitor?
The difference today is much less significant than it ever used to be. In the past, what it was you had to be a member of the nobility to be a barrister. So not any person could just go and do it. It was only by invitation, and you had to be of the certain bloodline. And two, the way they get their name is they are the only ones who are allowed to go within the bar in a courtroom. So if you think about in a courtroom, you've got that area that separates the audience from counsel and the jury box and the witnesses and the judge. That is the bar, and only barristers were allowed past the bar. And so that was the rule. And nowadays, it's really just not a distinction much at all. In the criminal court system, you still have to be a barrister, but in most of the civil litigation, which is what I do, the distinction just isn't terribly important anymore.
Oh, that is so cool. Did you have to wear a wig?
I was going to ask that.
So if I had stayed any longer, I would have had to have a wig. I did not have to have a wig while I was there. I mean, I was a baby lawyer. I was 10 minutes out of law school. You know, I graduated in May of 99 and moved there in August of 99. So I was brand spanking new. So they weren't exactly turning me over to like make arguments myself in court. I worked for a really big, huge corporate global firm. And so, you know, I was carrying people's memos and doing research memos and gathering, doing document review and gathering exhibits. So, but if I had to be
that had to be a cool experience. Like,
oh, it was fantastic. And it was such a great experience coming right out of American law school to then go to their system, particularly when I went in 99, when they were in a period of big transition in their legal system where they were adopting the EU, right? So they had all been autonomous, completely independent countries, all of whom distrusted each other and would never share laws and share boundaries and borders and customs duties and all this thing. And then they started with the EU and they were like, oh, maybe we are going to do that. And we're going to share a currency. Well, what does that mean if we share a currency? That means your banks have to talk to each other, people. So there was a whole big legal revolution really in their legal system. And so it was fun to be there as they were trying to figure all of that out, because there was a lot moving at that time.
So you were a part of history.
Well, I mean, I was watching. But it was really fun. It was a great experience, and it really, I think, and I think it was great for John and me both to be on our own as a young married couple in a place where we knew 0 people, and we had to make it on our own.
That's cool.
I think that was a really good time for us, and we just had such a great time. And we both were young, so we worked hard. You know, we were just working so hard.
What did they think of your Southern accents?
Well,
English
have
people
to
love
know.
Southern accents.
I mean,
well, it's funny.
Yeah.
So honest to goodness, I was a little bit, John and I both were a little bit of a party trick for my London partners and clients, because they would sort of, you know, like, Jenny, tell us the story, because they just wanted to hear our accent. So that was kind of an occasion. I had one boss who was an older fella who had never hired an American before. And I'm not sure he wanted to hire me, but the woman partner hired me, perhaps over his objection. And the first time I turned in a research memo, so ladies, all of you attorneys will know, the first time you got to turn in a bench memo or a draft motion or some really important written thing, it's a big deal. And I stayed up late and I worked really hard, and I turned it into him. It was probably, I don't know, 8 pages, 10 pages. And he looked at it for about 10 seconds, and he had this massive desk, and he looked at it for about 10 seconds and then threw it back at me and said, "I will not read this material until it is written in the Queen's English." And I ran out to the secretaries. I'm like, "The Queen has her own English? What the hell? You guys, you have to tell me these things."
I need a translator.
It was the English spelling. He wanted the English spellings, you know, so where we use, if you use the word organization, we have a Z in that word. They would have an S. And so it's the same stuff, but he wanted it in the Queen's English. So I made it in the Queen's English. So I will never forget that. And my mother said, we moved there in August and came home at Christmas. And she said I had lost my accent by the time we moved home, because I was, we were trying to, or I in particular was trying to succeed in that work environment. And it was definitely, I don't know if it was frowned on, but it was definitely an oddity. And if I'm going to be recognized, I would like to be recognized not because I'm weird, but because I'm smart and I'm a good lawyer. And so that's what I wanted them to value in my work product.
You were trying to live in their world and assimilate and,
Now, we
play
did
by
have
their
some,
rules. I get
we
it.
did have some great occasions. Now, this was before, if y'all remember those Austin Powers movies.
Yeah.
So the Austin Powers movies identified to Americans that the word shag means something different in the UK than it does in the United States. I grew up in South Louisiana, where we like to shag dance. And so we were at a dinner party with lawyers, clients, all these fancy people. And John and I were like, yeah, we shag. Absolutely. We love to as a group, like on weekends, wherever we can. If you can find live music, we love to shag. And all of these people are like, like record scratch, drop the mic. What are these people saying?
That's funny.
And finally, my colleague leaned over and said, hey, honey, that means something totally different here. So yeah, John and I howled with laughter when those Austin Powers movies came out. We thought, oh, that was us.
Oh my God.
So it was a great experience. We had fun.
I also wanted to just kind of comment on the fact that you read aloud to your kids, because I think that's super cool. When I was a kid, my father read The Hobbit and the Chronicles of Narnia to me and my sister. And those, it's like a core memory for me. We would sit there and we'd listen to him, and he'd read to us every night. And then we would go take the AR test, because that was actually still like a thing back then too. And those were just such great memories, and they really engendered in me a love of reading. And I still do love to read. And it was just great quality time with them. So that's just like great that you do that. My kids aren't so into that. I've tried, but the fact that you guys do that just it brought back those memories to me when you said that. And I just think that's great.
Yeah, it is truly, I mean, I'm not kidding. It's probably my favorite 30 minutes of the day. And I don't do it 7 days a week. We're not perfect. But we have, gotten through the Harry Potter books, and we've done some of the Narnia books, and we loved it. But it's like they settle down, they stop, they're disengaged. There's no screens, no electronics in the bedrooms. And so I get their full undivided attention, and it's my favorite time of the day.
It's also
And you're
a great
instilling
way.
time.
in them. You're
also-
instilling in them a lifelong love of reading and learning
Yeah.
too. I believe that. I did that religiously with my daughter before bed, and that kid reads like I've never seen. I mean, she still reads. She's still in school, and which I love. I just think you should never stop learning. I think it's a wonderful thing. Carrie, what's going on with you? What are your thoughts with our guests today?
So a couple things on the reading thing. I did that religiously because I grew up with my mom reading to me, and I'm a big reader. I love reading. But it is a great way to fall asleep at night when you're reading your kids, because inevitably my husband Jacob would be in one bed with one kid and I'd be in the other bed with the other kid. We would both be asleep and the kids would be awake.
That's right.
So, but yeah, and as they get older, there's so many great series at Books a Million. Right now Sebastian is 15 and he asked Santa Claus for the Wizard of Oz series, which is a really big series. And I didn't really know about that growing up, but it's actually a really good series. So he's reading that right now. So I'm glad I did read to the kids so much. And I think the series are great. The Percy Jackson series, as your boys get older, really, really good. So, Kimmy and Betsy.
And they have been recently into the Wings of Fire or Wings of Fury. There's some kind of dragon stuff. They love it. And we read those.
The series are really good for the boys. But, Jenny, I mean, we were in college together and I was friends with John, but not friends with you. But I still know that you were so involved in everything in college. And I remember, even though it was back in the mid 90s, not to age us, but so you've just been so impressive with your whole career. And yes, you're married to John, and yes, he's the mayor, but you stand on your own 2 feet as an independent, strong, impressive, philanthropic, successful lawyer. So I've always admired you for that. And really, you started doing that stuff in college. I mean, you have been into volunteering in the community and student government and leadership and everything since college. So I just commend you on that. You've been very impressive for the past 30 years.
Some people are just natural leaders like that.
Yeah, that's humbling. That is humbling to hear, and obviously flattering to hear. And I will say 2 things. One, I'm the oldest of 5 children, so I'm used to being the boss. And so
#bossy.
when I, and this is true in a church committee meeting, this is true in all the things, and it's true in my work life. If we've got work to do, I like to get organized and get it done. I'm definitely a doer. And I like to do that. I love nothing more than a to-do list that I can check off and get done.
Off.
I love checking something off a to-do list.
But the second thing is, and I will credit this to my parents, my dad especially, he was a small town lawyer, and he was super involved in our community. He was with the Kiwanis Club, flipping pancake breakfast on the sort of underserved parts of our community all the time. A lot of his clients were from the underserved part of our community, and they couldn't pay in cash for sure. And sometimes they couldn't pay at all. So sometimes if they were, for example, a mechanic, then all 5 of us had recycled bikes because we had a client who was a bike repairman. And so all of us had bikes that he had rebuilt for us as payment to my dad for his legal services. And so I think I just was tuned into that from the beginning, that, and I have 2 boys, so you'll forgive me, but it's the Spider-Man thing, right? With great blessings comes great responsibility. If you have power, you got to use your power for good. And that's really become a mantra. And I really do think I picked that up from my dad, because I think as I look at him, he's done church mission trips all of my life. He's done all of the pancake and jambalaya dinners and all the fundraisers for Kiwanis. And that is who he was. That's who he is and always has been. And I think he's instilled that in all of us, that if you're in a community, you need to be in the community, because otherwise, and I've heard him say this my whole life, otherwise don't complain. Like, unless you're doing something about it, I don't want to hear it, Missy. I mean,
I've definitely seen that in you. You know, I think there was an article about you in the Tallahassee Woman magazine a couple years back. And if anybody's watching, you know, if anybody's watching who hasn't read it, I encourage you to read it, because it's a really good article on it, Jenny. But it really focuses on how you have always served the underserved community, and you've always had that passion in different ways. And so you and your husband both, you're not up here looking down on the community, you're in the community, and you're actually with the underserved. And that's always been impressive. And something I've loved about your work too is your work for abortion, and not abortion, God, that Supreme Court, the Supreme,
It's hanging in the air, Carrie. That word is hanging in the air.
Right. We're all dealing with a lot this week.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to ask you about that. I'm not going to ask you about the Supreme Court opinion, but your work on adoption, the other A word, because I think that you've always been very good about helping people in the community with adoptions, and it can be very expensive. Yeah. And you know, from what I've heard, I didn't adopt, but from what I've heard, you're very instrumental with a lot of families, kind of guiding them through the adoption process, which can be confusing and expensive. So if you could just touch on that a bit, I think that would be helpful.
Sure. Well, and the Children's Home Society is where I got involved in that probably 17 years ago when I first moved to town in 05. And I loved it because, like Dana said at the beginning, it's the best moment in court I will ever have, because everybody's happy, everybody's smiling, everyone's lovey. That never happens in my job. Like in my day job, that's never going to happen. And so I love those moments where children who have been taken out of the foster care system or taken from their parents and put in the foster care and neglect system, they get a family. We call it, in the adoption world, we call it a forever family. And looking at those, the children and their happiness, the parents and their happiness, and the siblings and the grandparents and all this. One of my favorite moments in the whole wide world was, I think it was with Judge Gus Akins, and the grandfather was real country, kind of a rural family, and all, you know, you have to go through all the formalities, and it's, I'm putting you under oath, and we're going to take testimony, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And the grandfather sort of raised his hand, and he's like, so wait, Judge, what's the deal? Like, can we keep her or not? We want to keep her. We love her and we want her. Can we keep her? And I mean, like, there wasn't a dry eye in the house at that point, because you're like, yes, this is what we're here for. So I love that kind of work and being involved in that. And I wish I had more time to do it, because I do think watching those forever families make connections is amazing. We have a number of families in our church community who are adoptive parents, and watching their families grow has just been so impressive. Those parents are just so giving and so wonderful. So
if somebody watching is in need of some adoption resources, where should they go to look?
In our community, you can call Children's Home Society. So they're on Miccosukee Commons Drive. And I think the Baptist Children's Home also does it here in this community as well, although I'm not as familiar with their resources. So,
you know what's amazing? I bet if you think about it, you know people who foster and have gone on to adopt other children, probably more than you realize. You know, I have such a huge place in my heart for somebody who will love other people's children.
I know, because it's hard, right?
That's why it's so. Yeah, that's why you won't see me get on a teacher. Teachers win. Boom. Nope, they win. You know, anybody who takes care of somebody else's kids, because you know sometimes you don't want to take care of your own kids. You're like, I hope you could do something with her, lady. No, it's a great thing that you're doing, and I'm so glad that you help facilitate that becoming a very legal thing, so people do feel a sense of home and attachment, and this is real and it's never going to change. I just think that's such a important thing for people to experience, and thank you so much for giving of yourself to do that. What is your day job, by the way?
So I'm an attorney. I run the Tallahassee office of our law firm. My firm is based here and in Fort Lauderdale and Miami. And I represent mostly clients, big corporate and institutional clients in state agency litigation. So rulemaking and licensing and permitting, all in the state agency world. So that's what I've done since I moved back to Tallahassee. But I want to go back, Carrie, to something you said about service. I think one of the things that is important and like central to who I am is when John says, "Hey, I want to run for county commission," or "I want to run for the city commission," I don't say yes to that so that we can go and be in the Christmas parade, or the holiday parade, or the springtime Tallahassee parade. I say yes because I realize it's going to give us a seat at the table in the community to make some changes. And that's what I believe in. And that's what I am excited about. And so when he says, "Let's do this thing," I'm not going to lie. I sort of swallow and gulp and like get real nervous because it is scary.
It's like being Jimmy Basic's law partner, Carrie.
Yeah, I think that's probably exactly right.
Two thumbs up with a little anxiety on the side.
Yes, but that's the reason. That's why we do it, right? Is because if we're not, well, then what are you doing it for? You're doing it for a parade, and for the attention. That's not who John is. That's not who I am. And so that's the part I like, is digging in.
I love it. I want to cover one thing, and then I want to go to Kimmy, Kia, and Betsy as we close today. But tell us about what is it?
Soul of Southside. Yes.
Yeah.
The Soul of Southside. Okay. So last year, a group got together and created a brand new festival at Lake Anita, which is down off of South Monroe and Adams Street, and the new FAMU Way. And we're doing it this coming year, in 2 weeks, actually, coming up. And it'll be our first annual. Last year was the inaugural. This will be our first annual festival. And this year it's grown because we're not in COVID. But the idea is to tell the story of the South Side of Tallahassee and to celebrate the culture and the community, and tell the good stories and have good sort of development and positivity happening in that space. I was not a volunteer. I'm not a founding member in any way. I went to the festival as an attendee last year and loved it. I said, this thing should become a tradition for Tallahassee, and I'm confident it will be. I think 10 years from now, we're all going to look back and say, this is a tradition, a treasured tradition. How did we ever not do this? And so I said, hey guys, y'all put me in. This is good stuff. This is good stuff happening here. Let's do this. And so I have gotten involved on their planning committee. We've got a 5K coming up on Saturday, May the 14th, where we're going to go down FAMU Way and then onto the St. Mark's Trail. And then we've got the big festival with a ton of entertainment and vendors and economic opportunity events happening. And I'm just really proud of the event, but also of the sort of equity in place that we're trying to build, and building relationships in the community that haven't existed before. So I'm really excited about it.
I love that. And it's an important thing that's going on right now, is that we support the South Side, because we've got that usual tension, which is, don't change us, but we want to help. But are you helping? Are you changing our community? It's just, there's a lot of tension. So I like that you're doing things to call attention to that and hopefully bring people together to work for something that will work for everybody.
And we just had a big lecture with an expert from Atlanta talking about how do you grow and economically develop an underdeveloped area without gentrifying and losing your culture. Right. And so like really studying that and looking at.
Look how College Town went. That didn't go like we wanted it to do. And if that happens on the South Side, where's everybody gonna live? I mean,
right. Where do people go? Pretty
soon it's gonna be unrecognizable. But thank you, Jenny. Well, we're running out of time. I want to give just a few parting comments to Kimmy, Kia, and Betsy, and then we will close. But thank you so much for being with us. I'm so glad we finally got you here.
Thank you.
Kimmy.
Yes, thank you so much, Jenny. Tell me again the name of the festival on the South Side.
It's the Soul of Southside Arts and Humanities Festival, and the website is SOSfest.com.
Very cool. Thank you so much, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you,
Kia, I'm about to text you. Are we in this? Are we doing the Southside
I was
thing? Are
just
we
about
got a
to
booth? We got a table? What are we doing?
Yes, we have been coordinating with the coordinator for the Soul of Southside. We are participating in a 5K actually the day after the 5K. So we will actually just be a vendor. We're not going to have us run twice because I'm not going to make it. Maybe Carrie, Dana, and
Jimmy's running.
Okay.
Jimmy's
you
running.
can make it, but I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to make it. So we do have Girls on the Run the day before, but we are in coordination with the Soul of Southside. And I'm so happy. One of the biggest things you said about gentrification, one of the things I love about Jacksonville is they hold on to their old stuff, you know, and then they rebuild it. And I think that's one of the things that we have to make sure that we're doing on the South Side, instead of just moving in and, so to speak, adding a Starbucks, right?
Right.
And you're actually adding on to the actual South Side. So that is great, especially with me being a alumni of FAM. I want to keep it preserved, but we want to build, you know, we want to continue to keep changing as the times change, but we want to make sure that we preserve that history. So I think that is great that we're acknowledging the fact that gentrification is a thing and that we're putting it into the Soul of Southside. And Basic Brooks is one of the, I would not be here, I'm gonna be honest, I would not be here if these ladies and men did not support and genuinely love what they do and the communities that they serve. So I'm so glad to be in this capacity because the moment she said it, I was like, we're already in that. Don't worry about it. We got this.
I'm blowing out the text. Kia,
right.
are we doing this? Kia, are we doing this? Yeah,
Right.
I knew it would be.
So we're good to go. That's something that we'll be talking about in our Monday marketing meeting. But I thank you so much, Ms. Dailey, for everything that you're doing and all the things that you and your husband, not just your husband, but one of the biggest things you said about you being at the table. And I think us as women have to realize that we bring the chairs to those tables. And if we decide to pick up that chair and move to another table, it's because we've already got our table set. We just decided to sit at the table with you because all our like minds are not like-minded. And we're just trying to pull out those creative parts of each thing in order to make that event or that, you know, thing work. So I thank you so much for building that table and starting that table and letting us know that we all can do this, just like the rest of these women that are on here. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Love that. Thank you, Kia. Betsy, what are your final thoughts today?
Well, thank you, Jenny, for coming on. You are an empowered woman, sis, and you've been an awesome guest. I feel like I've learned so much just listening to you, and I'm inspired by your service, and I can't wait to cheer the bubbies on again with you next season. And I am coming to the Soul of Southside. I will see you there.
Awesome. Very good.
Hopefully. Yeah.
That's so exciting. Well, thank you, panel. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, our guest. Mark and Jimmy, not so much.
Well, happy Cinco de Mayo, ladies. Time for your margaritas. Time to get the margaritas on.
I am going to go eat a taco though. Hey, I'm going to give you one little trivia before we shut down. Do you know the people who make the wigs for the lawyers?
Yes.
In England? There's only 2 people in the world who make those wigs. One is in somewhere in the UK and one is in Australia. And the person in Australia is less expensive. And they have a waiting list for a long time. So the first thing your parents do when they find out you've been admitted into law school is get you on the list for your wig.
Oh, wow.
I can confirm.
Now, me, the thought of having to wear a black unflattering dress and hide and not wear makeup or hair, I just don't understand how anybody could practice law under those conditions. So I wouldn't
Pretty
do
crazy.
that. Anyway, thank you, Jenny Dailey, our lovely first lady who gives of herself to our community every day, goes hard for children especially, and really has made our community a better place from your presence in it. You do that, man, straight ticket to heaven every time.
Yes.
So you got a fast pass. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I hope that's true. And
yeah. No, I know
and,
people.
And more to come, and more to come.
No, thank you though. And we will be seeing more from you. And I want to see you maybe in Tallahassee off Brevard Street one day in that big mansion. How about that?
Oh golly. Oh no.
Yeah, I like that.
Never
All
say
right, ladies,
never.
thank you
Never
so
say
much
never.
again.
All right.
Thank you,
On
everybody,
that
for
note,
tuning
I'm
in.
out. Good
She's
night.
starting her pack and her campaign contributions are ready right now. No, I'm kidding. But thank you, everyone, for another episode of the Empower Hour, brought to you by the Empower Plant by Basic Brooks. We had Jenny Dailey today, and she just made the world a better place and our afternoon brighter from her being in it. So thank you, everyone, and we will see you next Thursday for another Facebook Live 4:30. And you can always catch these wherever you get your podcast. See you then.